So a little while ago, I was riding with two friends and conversation turned to brake pads. One friend said that they swore by a particular aftermarket brand of mountain bike brake pad. The other said they simply bought the cheapest sintered pads they could find on eBay. Now both these riders are a fair bit better than me, so it got me thinking, is there actually a difference in all the different aftermarket brake pads you can buy? And if so, are the more expensive ones actually worth it? So a short answer to the intro there, yes, there is a difference between all the mountain bike brake pads you can buy, but the question of if the more expensive ones are worth it is slightly more complicated. Historically, I've generally gone for OEM pads, be that from SRAM or Shimano. But last winter in the UK, I got through what felt like a ridiculous amount of Shimano's sintered pads. And it got me questioning if OEM pads are actually worth it, because generally, they are the most expensive option. I'm aware there's pretty much an endless array of aftermarket brake pads out there, and the more research I've done, the more conflicting information I've found. So I might actually do a part 2 of this video with some of the other popular options that are available. If there's a particular brand of brake pad that you've been really impressed with, please let me know about it in the comments down below, and I might end up testing it out for the follow-up to this video. For me, the pads I've chosen for this test represent the 3 crucial price points when considering brake pads. Those being the absolute cheapest I could find, the pricey SRAM OEM option, and the thoughtfully priced aftermarket option sitting somewhere between them both. So, for the very cheapest pads I could find, I went with the COOMA Sport full metal bicycle disc brake pads for SRAM Maven caliper Ultra Class. A catchy name for an interesting brake pad. These pads cost me 17 New Zealand dollars for 4 sets of pads. That's the same as £7 or 10 US dollars. Truly incredible value if they actually work. Up next and representing our thoughtfully priced aftermarket option, we have the Frictive FR225M metal pads. At the moment, you can only get these pads in New Zealand and Australia, but if you're really interested in trying them out, just send Frictive an email, and regardless of where you are in the world, they'll probably be able to get a set of pads out to you. These pads cost 30 New Zealand dollars per pair, which is the same as 17 US dollars or 13 British pounds. Full disclosure, I didn't actually pay any money for these pads because Frictive very kindly sent them out to me for this test. But they've not requested that they see this video before it goes live. They've not requested that I have to say nice things about the pads, and generally the fact that I haven't paid for them isn't going to affect how I review them. And for our most expensive pad today, we have the SRAM extra large sintered pads for SRAM Maven. These come in at 59 New Zealand dollars per pair of pad, which is the same as 25 British pounds or 33 American dollars. Being the most expensive pads, you would kind of expect these ones to be the best, and in some ways they are, but it's not quite that simple. I should say at this point, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. We're trying to get some momentum behind this YouTube thing at the moment, and if you wanted to subscribe, it would help me out massively. Obviously, no worries if not, but just know you will be judged. On to ride impressions, and let's start with the COOMA Sports. These don't really look like sintered pads when you get them out of the plastic bag. Indeed, they don't really look like any sintered pad that I've seen before. Apparently they are sintered pads, or rather full metal, but to my eyes they look like something else altogether. In terms of getting these pads bedded in, they actually felt pretty bitey and strong immediately, which again isn't an experience I've had with sintered pads in the past, and got me questioning the build quality of these pads and generally what they're actually made of. For reference, I was using some fairly new 203mm rotors kindly supplied by Outspoken Cycles, link down below if you want to get yourself a set. For all these pads, the bedding in process was pretty much identical. That was 10 minutes of riding around with the brakes on sort of 10 to 15%, just getting some pad material transferred to the disc. After that, it was sort of 15 to 20, nearly but not quite full speed stops, so like 25 kilometers an hour, going down a hill, put the brakes on hard, but don't quite come to a full stop. And that is the bedding in process I followed for all of these pads. Throughout this process, the COOMA Sport pads felt pretty much the same, which isn't something I've had with any pair of brake pads in the past. On the trail, these pads felt fine, but not great. I had a few moments where I thought to myself, oh dear, these brakes are not doing enough braking for my liking. and with a new set of pads, that's not really the sensation you're looking for. I got to just over 2,000 meters of descending on these pads, and they felt pretty much the same at the end of testing as they did when I initially put them on my bike, which would suggest to me they're made out of a material that is very, very hard. Also, they felt quite binary, but in a very unpredictable way. Like you'd pull the lever, the pad would sort of start biting a bit and then suddenly really kick in and lock up the rear wheel, which wasn't ideal. They also felt kind of scratchy the whole time they were on the bike, like there was some like grit on the rotor or pads, but these were new pads and pretty new rotors, so that wasn't the case, and again would suggest to me these pads are made out of a material that is very, very hard. If you're totally strapped for cash, these pads will work and they will stop you. Mountain biking isn't cheap, and if these are the only pads that you can afford, don't even worry about it. What's more important is that you're actually out there riding your bike and having fun, because at the end of the day, that's what really matters. But just know you are leaving a fair amount of performance on the table by running these pads. So, onto the Frictive pads. So for my first ride on these, I actually forgot that I was riding a different set of brake pads. It just felt like I'd gone back to my normal SRAM OEM pads, and I was quite happy. It was only at the end of the ride that I remembered I was trying out some new pads. You could interpret that as them being underwhelming, but I think that's a slightly unkind perspective. They performed in a predictable and dependable manner, with all the power I could want delivered in a way that I was familiar with. Sometimes you want your components to be invisible, and these brake pads definitely fit that description. They provide no-nonsense braking performance at a reasonable cost. Compared to the SRAM pads, I would say they have slightly more modulation built into the pad, and they don't bite as hard or as immediately as the SRAM pads do. On long descents, I didn't notice any discernible brake fade, and throughout the testing process, the pads kept feeling better and better, maturing like a fine wine. I actually kept meaning to take these pads off my bike and move back to the SRAM ones for testing, but I was enjoying them so much, I just kept riding them, which is definitely a good sign. In terms of braking material, these are actually the skinniest pads on test, so they probably won't last the longest, but at their price point, I think that's a compromise worth making. Onto the SRAM OEM pads. I'll be honest, when I started testing out these pads, I didn't want these ones to be my favourite. We all love an underdog, and I was hoping that one of the cheaper pads would come out on top. Unfortunately, these were my favourite pads on test. Admittedly, they didn't have much extra performance at all over the Frictive pads, but they do have more initial bite, which is something I really look for in my brakes. Other than having more initial bite, they also have slightly more pad material than the Frictive pads, so in theory, they should last slightly longer. In terms of ultimate power, heat resistance, and general noisiness, these are very much comparable with the Frictive pads, but just ever so slightly better. And I mean ever so slightly. The question of if these more expensive pads are worth it for that tiny little gain in performance is probably going to come down to the individual rider, because really, there isn't much in it at all. And I think that's going to be the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching if you've got this far. If you've got any questions or comments about brake pads, maybe some brake pad horror stories, let me know about it in the comments down below. One of the things I've been really proud of on this channel recently is how active the comments have been. It's just fantastic to see. So please, if you have anything to say, let me know about it down below. I love hearing what people are riding, and the more we share, the more we learn. Other than that, thank you for watching, and hopefully I will see you in the next one. Oh.